the financing options and their impact on resale value or the value of your condo, the bylaws and what we can really do or not do, and the terms of the loan and what they mean to you as individual owners. So that's kind of what we're going to be walking through here. So again, the principal driver of what is pressuring our finances is modernizing the elevators. And we'd like to kind of give you the bottom line up front here. Delaying or not executing modernizing the elevators does not appear to be an option that we should consider. These elevators are at the end of their life. The parts are pretty obsolete. As we all know, they're frequently going out. Both elevators could fail at any time for an extended period. And if they do so, they could be a major safety and quality of life problem. And let me put that in different terms. How many of you want to carry your groceries up 10 to 15 floors? And if both elevators go out, I could imagine the fire department deciding that this is not a safe place and put some very heavy burdens on us. So the remaining couple of bullets here about what we're doing and how we've gotten to where we are. Let me let George walk through the remaining part of this chart.
Okay, Roy, this is George again. And by the way, the photo you're looking at is actually the control panel in our machine rooms. This is the actual circuitry wiring that carries the signal that whenever you push a button to call an elevator, the signal goes through these wires to instruct the relay switches to send the car. So it's a pretty scary picture, actually. In any case, I talked about previously that we're at the end of our competitive bidding process. We hope to have a contractor selection next week, in which case we can hopefully negotiate the contract in August and sign in September. After that, it'll take about 14 to 16 months until we're fully modernized. That involves manufacturing of all the components, delivery of the components. We'll need a crane to deliver the components through the roof attic access into the machine room. And then each elevator will take about 3 months to modernize. So we'll have a 6-month period where we will only have one elevator in operation, probably late spring of next year. Total cost is going to be about $850,000. And we think the demonstration of the association's ability to pay for the project is going to be pretty key before we can sign the contract. And again, we'd like to start this process in September, so we have fully modernized elevators by the late summer or fall of next year.
So again, the bottom line to this chart is we can't accept the risk of not moving forward on modernizing these elevators. It's too great a risk to each of our values in our unit, and it's a major safety issue. Oops, going the wrong way, excuse me. Here's a chart we put together because it shows what the most recent 2020 reserve study is projecting over this 5-year period. And generally, we're looking at infrastructure costs of about 1.3 million over the next 5 years. Those can be broken into the balcony activities that are the kind of the red numbers there, which complete this year or are now completed. The elevators, which is in the next 2 years, shown in blue. There's unplanned things that we are representing only for 2020. These are the things that showed up this year that we didn't expect. As Rick said, the second 100-year flood in 3 years. Please recognize that that yellow or gold color is not represented in any of those other 4 years. The reserve study plan here is not expecting other unplanned activities, and that represents a degree of caution and risk. The light blue are safety and securities, the new updated security stuff we've just added, and some other infrastructure kind of activities are the purple things, working on plumbing and piping. So these are some broad categories. If you go to the reserve fund, you'll see it in much more detail, but this is kind of a big picture of what is driving our $1.3 million of expenditure over the next 5 years. And again, I caution you that we have a modest contingency here for unplanned activities or surprises, if I might say. George, Nancy, any comments you want to add?
In for a minute. The 1.3 million is just in 2020 and 2021. That's our problem. If you look over the 5 years, you need to add in those other 4 years. So that I think we took that caption out, but the 1.3 is just this year and next year. That's a lot of money in this year and next year, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in. Then you need to add in the rest of the years over the 5-year period.
Yeah, and Roy, I would just add that what you're looking at is the result of the Miller-Dotson update to the 2018 reserve study. We spent a lot of time in February, March, and early April working with Miller-Dotson. All the committees had an opportunity to provide input. FSR provided input, a lot of time with Jose to get his perspective on this as well. So this is, all of this is documented in the 2020 reserve study.
Okay. So, you know, what we just showed you are the obligations that we think we need to be taking. And this chart kind of shows the cash flow, how much we're going to be spending in 2020, 2021, 2022, and on out there. The red bars represent the beginning reserve fund balance. The gold colored bars represent the ending balance in those years. And that which is, you know, our issue, unless we find a funding alternative, is in 2021, we are committing, or we can potentially commit to more funds than we have in the reserve fund. Similarly for 2022, and we start the year in 2023. So the point here is that we just, you know, this board, we as owners, we cannot accept a negative reserve fund balance. I mean, we can't plan and commit to things that exceed the funds that we have. So that kind of reserve fund balance, one, is not acceptable from a financial and fiduciary responsibility. It also hurts our resale value. And we really must find some alternative sources of funding to resolve this problem. And the rest of this talk is oriented towards solutions to that. Any comments from Nancy or Greg?
Nope, I think it says it all.
So what you're going to hear is that the financial working group and the board feel that there really are only two options available to us. One is a special assessment to be conducted this year and collect money this year, totaling $350K. And we will show you how that impacts the beginning and ending balances of the reserve fund account against the commitments we have. The other option is a term loan. And, you know, I've somewhat introduced Don Plank here. We have gone through a very competitive process, starting looking at 5 different banks and narrowing it down to, the National Cooperative Bank, which seems to be offering us the best terms for a $600K loan to be paid off in 7 years. So what is on the horizon here is a special meeting, probably to be set in August, to vote on these two options. And it will, as Brendan and Olga will tell you, it will take about half the membership to agree to support option 1, special assessment, and 2/3 of the owners to support a loan. So the charts that follow are intended to help you appreciate the impact and options impact of these two options. So here's the first. If we get a $350K special assessment, the table over there on the right shows you, one, we maintain the same monthly assessments for the next 4 or 5 years, and the obligation to each owner by tier to cover that special assessment is in the right-hand side of that table, labeled owner impact. The bar charts, hopefully this looks more analogous to what I showed you earlier. With the special assessment, we will be able to always maintain a minimum reserve fund balance, either beginning or end of the year, of $250K to cover surprises and another 100-year flood, if I can use that example. So the $350K special assessment gives us a modest contingency to cover future costs. We will always have a reserve fund balance equal to or greater than 250K, which was a design alternative. And by 2024 and 25, we start building a much stronger reserve account balance. Nancy, George, Greg, anything you want to add to what I've said here?
Nope, got it right.
Okay.
Can I ask a question for a moment?
Yes.
Again, I hate to ask stupid questions, but what are the tiers?
The front right left side, if you're facing the building, the 13 tiers are about 1,800 square.
Roy, let me just, I'm new also, Mel, this is Laura. It's what's the last number on your unit? So if you're like, I'm 12, so I'm a 12 tier.
Okay, got it. That's simple, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went down the wrong path on that. Yeah. All right, thank you. Here's a very comparable scenario, but for the $600,000 term loan. And what we are discussing with the National Cooperative Bank is a term loan to be paid off in 7 years at an interest rate of 3.75. That's compensated also by the fact that monies we put in deposit with the bank earn us 0.4% per year, which actually lowers our real cost. And what you see over there on the right side, the financial working group would make the argument there's no immediate impact on owners, meaning that if we accept the loan, there's no special assessment, no additional out-of-pocket money above or beyond the monthly assessment, and that the monthly assessment would hold steady through the period 2020 through 2025. And what you see down there below is, yes, there is a cost for taking a loan. It would add about 67K more to the infrastructure cost. But we, the financial working group, are advocating this approach. So let me say, it looks attractive to us. It maintains the minimum balance of 250K, which is our target. It doesn't place greater burden on owners now. And well, looks extremely attractive to resolve our problem. I would at this point be glad to take any questions about the numbers, how did we get this or that, rather than opinions on what we should do, because we can hold that more to the open forum. But are these numbers, do they make sense to all of you? Those of us on the financial working group have been putting these numbers together for the last couple of months, and we understand them, but as we try to walk through this in a hurried pace, maybe something doesn't quite make sense. So if there's any kind of detailed questions here, I'd like to pause. I'm not hearing any comments, so.
I have a quick question about the slides themselves. Will these be posted on Building Link or anything for future reference?
I'm sorry, would you ask that again? I didn't understand you.
Will these slides be posted or made available?
Yes.
Thank you.
And this whole discussion's being recorded and will be available because there are a number of owners not on this line, and we want to make this information available.
Rick, my message, can you hear me?
No, Herb, I can't hear you.
No, I can't. A couple of questions, Roy. You have for this year $139,000 for unauthorized or some things that are coming out of our reserves. What is for 139,000?
Yeah, I can address that.
139,000 was things that we have needed to fix this year that weren't represented in the 2020 reserve fund. And those included things like damage to the lobby from the flood. We had some unexpected cooling tower costs that weren't in the reserve study. And when you put those all together, it added up to 130. George, can you amplify on that better?
Just two other areas. We had 2 water heaters that went bad, had to be replaced.
Yes.
And we had the water incursion remediation by rerouting the gutter drain that cost some money as well. So none of that was in the original forecast.
So the forecast is based on the 2020 reserve study that we just completed, and that 102, Herb, are
Yeah.
numbers not included in that reserve study and occurred in real time.
You're on the financial, you talked about $600,000 we would take a loan out, but we wouldn't be paying the $100,000 in this year. It may be stretched over 2020, 2021. And if we have troubles getting supplies from the elevator, it could almost stretch into 2022.
Herb, the terms for the loan are $600,000 to be amortized over 7 years at 3.75%.
Does this loan affect any person or any apartment or condo apartment in the building who wants to sell or anything? Does this, are any obligations put on one of the owners who was planning to sell?
No, and you know, I'm not comfortable to be the expert to answer that. That's why we've invited Don Plank, who is the vice president at the National Cooperative Bank that we propose to borrow. He's going to be a speaker in just a few minutes to really answer your question in an authoritative way.
Okay, I'll wait.
Yeah. With that, may I?
Troy, this is Laura. Just one thing I wanted to chime in on. We really can't sign the contract for the elevator replacement project until we have the financing in hand. So even though we may not spend the money, we cannot commit to owing the money until we have the money lined up and ready to go.
Thank you, Laura. That's absolutely right. And
I
so
have one additional-
unless we as a group of owners resolve this funding problem, we can't ink the contract for the elevators because we will be committing to more money than we have access to.
Quick question from Donna here again. Going back to the point that Herb raised about the $139,000 discretionary expenses. So there was a mention there about the water incursion. I assume that that's referencing the 100, 200, 500-year flood. So those expenses were not covered by the insurance is what I'm assuming. The reason we had to expend those funds.
Donna, let me, there's a lot of details below the surface here. In this projections of costs, we have considered the monies that we got from insurance versus the cost that we will incur to repair things. So this is what is represented here in cost is the net to us. That is total cost minus what we get from the insurance, and what's left is what we have to pay for. So we have considered the insurance payment.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about what's our monthly income?
Gosh, that's great. Nancy, or is that a number quick on your?
It's, are you talking about what's the monthly reserve?
No, the owner's contributions, the monthly assessments, I understand it's like $5,200 per floor. What is the total for the entire building? What's our income per month?
The chart that's in front of you on the screen, the current monthly assessment is, you know, it shows for the various tiers as Laura described them to you, 11, 12, 13, 14 tier. And, you know,
What I'm saying, there's 14 floors, so we have a monthly income of $60,000.
17 floors.
The annual budget for the association is approximately $1 million, including monthly assessments and other income sources that we have.
Roy, you do not include the Smith apartment up
Yeah, the
on
penthouse.
the penthouse.
You're right, but we did include that in our model, and that's a oversight in how we laid out this chart. So we stand corrected on that.
A question on the total fees and interest expense that will cost us for the 600,000 term loan with 3.75. How much is that going to affect the monthly assessments in the future? That's 66,864 will have to be added to the monthly assessment.
We are proposing not to increase the monthly assessment. There will be sufficient funds within the existing monthly assessment structure to cover debt service over that 7-year period. And in fact, we have the potential to accelerate payment, if we have no additional infrastructure surprises, if I may say. So no, there will be no increase in the monthly assessment that we currently have, and we can cover the debt service. Nancy, anything I
No,
misstated?
that's exactly right. I mean, I think the point is when you saw that first chart that showed the giant dip, the rate at which we are accumulating reserve funds of 354K a year over the long term is more than sufficient to cover everything that we need to pay for that we are currently aware of. The problem is we have this giant elephant going through the boa constrictor. And so in the short term, we've got a problem. In the long term, we don't. So the debt service, as Roy said, will be well covered by the existing current reserve funds that we have each year. And, it's just to get us over this hump.
Roy, I'm sorry to jump in here and kind of cut the conversation, but I think some of our presenters later in this have to get off the phone in a few minutes. So I suggest that we move through the rest of the presentation and then continue the discussion.
All right. So expert number one, or two faces here, Brendan and Olga. We the board didn't want to be here speaking to what are the legal considerations, the buyer considerations, and the loan. So Brendan, I assume you take the lead here. What would you like to share with the owners on board?
Well, I'll thank you, and thanks to the committee for doing such a good job in lining up the primary options that are facing the community. I mean, we're here to let you know kind of what's required by your bylaws when it comes to making a decision of this import. First of all, and by the way, many condominiums go through this kind of moment in their history where they're faced with a hole in the budget and they need to deal with this. So it's not unusual to at some point borrow money from a bank like Don Plank's bank, or perhaps to do a special assessment because something didn't last as long as you hoped it would last. Now what we're here to let you know about is how that could be accomplished under your documents. That is, how can you get to either doing a special assessment for the community or how you can borrow funds. The drafters of your documents, and your documents are many, many years old at this point, they actually put some checks and balances in the overall governance structure of the association so that certain important decisions made by the association would not be made just by the board. And the two primary options in front of you now, that is a special assessment or the borrowing of funds, are both events that would require owner approval. Now, there's two different standards for that owner approval, one being easier to achieve than the other. But both of the decisions in front of you really require some input from the membership. So I'll let Olga walk through the two different standards, and then I'll close out with perhaps some strategies about how you're going to get there.
Yes, thank you, Brendan, and good evening, everyone. As Brendan mentioned that there are two options of funding this major elevator renovation project is the either levying of a special assessment or taking out the loan. As you know, the board of directors generally have a lot of powers and have a lot of authority to make decisions on behalf of the association. However, in certain cases, checks and balances, as Brendan mentioned, the authority could be limited. And the levying of a special assessment and or taking out the loan are the cases or instances where the authority is actually impeded by certain requirements that are in your bylaws. For special assessment, in order for the board of directors to make a special assessment that is in excess of the 15% of the total annual budget of the condominium, they need an approval of majority of all unit owners. So the board, in order for the board to make a special assessment before they make such a decision, they have to have approval of at least 50% of owners. Taking out the loan has another standard, and pursuant to bylaws of your condominium, if the borrowing or the sum proposed to be borrowed exceeds the 5% of the total annual budget, then the board of directors must obtain an approval of 2/3 of all of the total common element interest in the condominium. So a significantly highest threshold for approval over of a loan. Yet we believe it's not impossible and actually feasible if that's the option that receives the support of the condominium owners. So these are the two, I guess, the two standards: majority vote approval for the special assessment and 2/3 for the approval of the loan.
Right, so let me just, so as Olga just articulated, majority vote at a meeting at which a quorum is present for a special assessment versus 2/3 of the entire ownership. So I know that your financial working group is leaning towards the borrowing option. When I look just as an observer of these slides, we see that the borrowing of funds arguably has a lesser impact on your assessments as they go forward, because you're getting a good interest rate and you can spread this out over time. The borrowing of funds option is significantly more difficult to achieve because it's 2/3 of the entire community. And by the way, you can achieve that through either a vote at a meeting, or you can do a mail ballot. We can probably even structure a ballot that's electronic, given some changes to the Condo Act. So you're able to get there, but it's a lot harder to get to 2/3 of the entire community than it is to achieve a majority vote of owners at which a quorum is present. So I put that out there because if there really is a preference among the membership to go with the borrowing, then you're going to have to work harder to make sure to meet the threshold that the documents require. On the slide that you see in front of you here, you'll see there is another option that we've listed here, and that is an increase in the regular annual assessment budget. I actually included that here, although it's not in any of the committee's charts, just to make you understand that ultimately the other option that would be available to the board would be to simply fund this project through increasing your assessment. Your documents do not have any restriction on the ability of the board to simply increase your regular assessment. Although if you just run some numbers, you'll figure out that would really be a substantial increase in your regular monthly assessment, and that's something most communities try to avoid. But that would ultimately be a fallback position that you would have. So that's a summary of the options that are available under your bylaws. Obviously, it's a difficult business decision for the membership to make, but I'm glad to see that your committee has really laid out the options in a way that I think bring clarity to what the options are and what you all perhaps what you would prefer as a community. And we're happy to take any questions about that process.
Yes, I have a question.
I'm sorry, this is Laura again. I hate to do this, but we need to keep moving because the real estate agent's going to have to get off the phone here in a minute. And so if we take questions, we're not going to give her a chance to speak.
So let me move to the next chart. let me skip two. Don, be patient with me. Jiva, your chart?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not on Zoom. I was having connection issues, but I'm here. Okay, so you had asked if we could come in and talk a little bit about what drives the resale value of your condo and what are buyers looking for. And, you know, it's really important that buyers, you know, like you're saying, maintaining a safe and attractive building. I think your idea of fixing the elevator and lobby, they don't want to know that there are issues that exist with the building. I've had buyers that have walked into buildings, and not yours specifically, but just so that you know the level of importance of, you know, the aesthetics and things like that. You know, they want a modern lobby and they want to walk into that, and you know, that weighs into their decision to buy. The monthly condo fee is a really big factor when people are deciding if they're going to buy a condo. They want to know, what am I getting for this condo fee, right? And just to give you an example, just when I look at Arlington, right, I can tell you that right now there's 187 condos on the market in Arlington. Of those 187, 11 have condo fees above $1,000 a month. Okay. And then just for comparison's sake, just to say in the last, 6 months, 610 have sold and 22 of them have had condo fees over $1,000 a month. But they also want to evaluate, when I look at this condo fee, what am I getting for it? So some of those that have the condo fee over $1,000 a month, for example, when I look at Turnberry Towers, they're in Roslyn, and a condo that goes for about $1.4 million has a condo fee of $1,375 a month. And for that, they have a concierge, they have a state-of-the-art fitness center, a meeting room, party room, indoor pool, spa, security, and satellite TV. So just know that when buyers are looking at that condo fee, they're weighing very heavily, what do I get for it? What am I paying for, right? Because they're factoring in that, for example, a condo fee of $1,500 a month is about an extra $300,000 in a mortgage payment. Just if you weigh it against, your buying power, if you buy a fee simple or something like that. So it's really important to them that when they go through those condo docs, they know that it's a well-run, condo association. And, well-run means there's money there, things are maintained, and there aren't any issues that they see that they're gonna, end up having to pay for, that have kind of been deferred maintenance, so to speak.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions on her comments?
The only thing I would say is that we are known as a boutique condo, and that evaluated, I know our condo fees are higher than any of these buildings in our area, but people who are buying in here are buying for the fact that it only has 65 apartments. It doesn't have a swimming pool, true, doesn't have some of the other attachments, but we have a gorgeous view on half of our apartments. And it's a smaller thing that people who don't want to have all the traffic of people coming in and out, that's where ours are, a boutique condo.
So let me move to our other guest presenter here, which is Don Plank. He's the Vice President for Association Banking, which That's us. And I'd like for him to, kind of share with you the terms of this loan and answer the tough questions that some of you may have. Don?
Sure. Thank you, Roy, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a good meeting. So we're actually just down the street from you. I drove past your building today. I don't know if any of you have seen the sign down the street in Crystal City there, but I echo one comment that Brendan made, in that it's become more and more common that condos at least consider loans for the various projects that come up. And we've seen this time and time again. Given the age of a lot of condo buildings, there are very large projects that are coming up that often, given this lump in the reserves, that they can't quite meet. And so boards and owners start to compare, do we want a special assessment, or is there maybe a better option out there? And so often we see boards come to us to at least look at a loan option, and we've seen more communities start to go that way. So in talking with Roy, the loan that we came up with was a 7-year term loan for $600,000, in that the $600,000 would be made available to the community at closing, and they could use it for the elevator project and whatever else comes up over the next couple of years, and would have up to 7 years to pay it back. And if cash flow is sufficient, that it could be prepaid. It could be prepaid semi-annually, penalty-free, as long as it's from community funds and not from a refinance. Then the loan can be paid off early, and you might save on interest. And if you would do that, you would end up saving on interest costs. So those are the basics of the loan. Condos didn't used to be able to get loans until the mid-90s. Banks figured out how to secure them. And the primary value of collateral that a condo association has is assessments. And so the collateral is a pledge of the cash, the current and future income, which is the assessment, the board's ability to assess owners, or accounts receivable. And so that's what the bank takes as collateral for the loan. There is, as far as, there was a question earlier about individual unit sales, there is no lien on real estate. That's not possible because you own the real estate in common. And so owners do not come to the bank. There is no bank approval of a contract or an owner putting a unit up for sale. That goes on just as it does now. If you have a loan, that would be disclosed in your resale packet, and anything else. And if you'd have a special assessment plan, that would also go into the resale packet. That's given to potential buyers. They can go through, they can cancel a contract if they want to, and you disclose it in that way. And then moving forward, what the bank would look for is that debt service is built into your overall budget. It becomes just like another line item. And in this case, if I understand correctly what the working group has come up with, is that the debt service would be funded through what is now being put into reserves, or only a portion of the reserves would go toward debt service. So it looks like it could work out. It's definitely an option. It's not the option that every community chooses. Every community is unique. You do have a hard lift in a 2/3 approval, but it can be done, and I've seen it done in a number of communities.
Thanks, Don. Are there any questions for Don out there from owners online? If not, then I'll move forward. Um, so some of us are Pentagon types, so this is the classic stoplight chart that you might see in that funny shaped building. But what we tried to do here, trying to roll up all the information that we've given you in this talk, what does it mean, and how might you compare it? And the comparison factors are over there on the left as we, the financial working group, saw it. You know, what do we have a well-funded, the top row there, do we have a well-funded low-risk reserve fund? Well, if we do nothing, we're clearly red because we're spending to maintain this building, we'll spend more than we have, and clearly that's a red. Both the special assessment and the loan will resolve that problem. So either of those two options are reasonable. Special assessments, we have had 2 in the last 10 to 12 years that may be more or less than other organizations. We gave that a yellow. The special assessment, if that's the way we resolve our financial plan, the financial working group would like to relay the message to you owners online here that previous owners who have bought and sold and are no longer here got a discounted ride. They didn't have to pay into the bank, our accounts, to pay for these costs that are currently on our commitment list. And so if we do a special assessment, you owners now, and that includes me, are having to make up and fill the bucket for what previous owners didn't have to pay. And we're going to do it in one lump sum this year. That to us seemed like a red. The loan, it doesn't increase the monthly assessments more than they are. And yes, they are quite high in the marketplace, but they're no high. We can cover the payment of the loan for the same monthly assessment that we're currently paying. Therefore, we gave it a yellow, much like the current situation. As Jiva said, smart owners really look harder at monthly assessments. And, that's an even call here. We have a high assessment now, therefore yellow. If we have a special assessment, the monthly assessment, what you pay monthly, doesn't change, so it's the same. And the loan, again, we can cover the debt service for what we have, so that's constant across. The history of the next to the bottom row here, safe and attractive building, we don't have that now. We have an unreliable elevator system that you've all seen. We have not fixed the lobby and the floor problem. We give that a red. Special assessment will likely cover that. And the loan gives us more flexibility, therefore a green in covering those issues. So the overall cost, kind of near-term cost of ownership of your condo, the special assessment puts a burden on you this year. We gave it a red. The loan looks more attractive. Do realize this is the perspective of the finance working group, but by having spread the recovery, the funding necessary to cover our needs over a 6-7 year period with no additional burden looks the most attractive, and therefore we gave it a green. And truth in lending, yes, we believe the loan's the best option, and hopefully this chart tells you why we're recommending that. Nancy, George, Greg, others on the committee, anything I didn't give due credence to on this chart?
Nothing to add.
All right. So we've taken a fair bit of time, but this chart tries to roll up all of the messages that we've tried to document and share with you through this presentation. And in the end, our recommendation is to pursue the 600K loan over 7 years. Recognize that both the loan and the special assessment of 350K will resolve our problem. But we do believe that the 600K loan spreads the burden over a longer period and has less impact on individual owners this year. And that's the story. And we're open for either more questions or open forum as folks online may choose to want to do. Rick, I move to you at this point. Take the lead.
Okay, thank you. So you can make me the host or make me the host.
I'll do it. I'll stop sharing.
Ah, there's everybody.
Roy, this is Gil. Roy, can you hear me?
Yes, Gil.
At the risk of belaboring the point, I would like for Roy to confirm what I'm seeing here. Roy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, if we go back to chart 7 is talking about the special assessment. Under the scenario of the special assessment, I continue to pay my monthly assessment each month. In addition, I pay the special assessment that's on the rightmost side of that column, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I go now to chart 8. I'm on chart 8. On chart 8, I continue to pay my monthly assessment going forward. The loan would be paid with the current amount in each month's assessment. So under the scenario of a loan, my special assessment going forward for the next 7 years, there's no plan to impact what that amount is at this time, correct?
There'd be no change in the monthly assessment going forward, and we could cover the debt service.
And the reason I took the risk of belaboring the point, when I put on my homeowner, when I put on my homeowner hat, to me, it is not really apples and oranges. It's not really an apple to apple comparison. As a homeowner, where is the disadvantage, if any, that you or members of the financial working group see? Because me looking at this as a homeowner, not a board member, I don't see a downside to the loan scenario.
I agree with you. I mean, that's why we're recommending it, but kind of sound like a bank or truth in lending. We want to lay out all these options and make it as transparent as possible so that people, when they go and vote, have a accurate picture of what's being proposed and what the impacts are.
And,
This is
and forgive me for that question, but I asked that question because it's not necessarily intuitive that that is the case, but it is true. And when I saw that, because I've had the opportunity to see these charts as they were being prepared, that's what jumped out at me. Thank you.
Okay, next question is the Herb.
Yeah, a couple of things on the chart. When we talked about the special assessment, you said for $350,000, special assessment of that would cost me $5,308. But then we talk about a home loan, a loan from the bank of $600,000. I guess everyone knows I'm a strong defender of the special assessment, which we have done twice previously with not too many problems. In fact, we allowed people to pay the special assessment over a couple of months. But explain to me why you come up with a figure of $350,000 with a special assessment, in my case, of $5,300, as compared, we're talking a bank loan of $600,000.
So this is Greg. If I could add in here, just to explain this. If you look at the bottom of that chart, we're talking about 60K of interest expenses. If you divide that by roughly 60 units, that's $1,000 per unit divided by 7 years, which is less than $200 a year. That's why we can absorb it in the budget, so you don't actually see it.
All right, but what is the figure of $350,000, and then we're talking about a loan of $600,000? Why is there?
It's a difference between a loan and an expense is what we're talking about here. So we're paying back the loan, but the expense of $350K is absorbed by all the owners in one shot. Whereas the expense of the interest is absorbed by the owners over 7 years.
I think what he's asking is, where is that other 600,000, other 300,000, 250,000 coming from? If it's going to cost us $600,000 to fix the elevator, how can we pay it with a $350,000 special assessment?
We're
All right.
I think if you looked at the,
Greg, do you want to handle that, or can I step in?
Go ahead, Nancy. Go ahead.
Okay, so here's the difference. The $600,000 that we're borrowing is going to, we tried to find an amount that would give us that minimum balance in each of the years to deal with unexpected contingency. So when we start, as soon as we take the $600,000 loan, we're going to start paying interest and we're going to start paying principal, and we're going to be paying it back. With the $350,000, so over time, the amount of the loan that we have is going to reduce. I mean, we're going to, it starts at 600, it keeps going down. But the actual expense over those 5 or 6 years is only $66,000. The 350 is what we need to just hit that balance for 2021 and 2022 so that we have a sufficient amount in the contingency. If you observe the chart closely, you would see in 2024 and 2025, we have a huge reserve balance because we pulled $350,000 from our owners. So the cost of that to our owners was $350,000. The cost of the loan to our owners was just $66,000. That's the difference. So in 2024, 2025, whoever owns your unit could either get a return of reserve, or they could get a big decrease in their monthly assessments. But the point is, we have to do something now. So we have to take that 350 now in order to have those balances in 2021 and 2022. The $600,000 loan will continue to amortize over that amount of time, so the balance will keep going down. But I think you're focusing on the wrong thing. I don't want to say that, but the real question is, what is the cost to the owners? The cost to the owners of the assessment is $350K. The cost to the owners of the loan is $66K. So Greg, you got it exactly right on target by saying, well, so what does that really end up costing you over the period of the loan?
You know, I think I'm a math major. I understand completely what you're talking about, but why don't we borrow $350,000? If that's the special assessment, why don't we borrow $350,000?
Because $350,000 won't get, by the way, I was a math major too. The $350,000 by the year 2021 and 22 will be down to 175, and then all we'll have in our reserve is 100 and some K, which is
What
not.
you're saying is the borrowing 600,000 preserves the reserves.
Correct.
Yes.
That should have been the first statement. Borrowing 600,000 preserves the reserves, keeps us out of future financial trouble.
Right.
That is one of the biggest things that the financial working group and the board has been concerned with, is to ensure that the reserve remains healthy. If we paid for the majority of this project out of the reserves, as the earlier chart shows, we're in the red for 2 years, and that, God forbid we have another 100-year flood, or another cooling tower goes bad, or we have to replace more piping, or whatever. We won't have the money for that. So it's just a matter of being prudent, financial stewards, that we maintain this contingency at all times.
I remind you of the very early bar chart there that we incurred $130,000 of cost this year that was unanticipated. I put those under the category surprise. And there is no allocation in those years 2021 through 25 for similar surprises. The loan gives us contingency for that. If they don't happen, we pay it off faster. If they do happen, we have money for it. If they do happen, if we take this special assessment path, we may be calling on another special assessment.
Just one other thing to say, this is my 4th homeowners association that I'm a member of. The other 3 do not have the ability to borrow money. So we're constantly hit with special assessments. So the first thing I'm going to do is contact one of the homeowners associations that I'm on and say, instead of doing a special assessment, why don't we borrow the money? But it may be different from state to state. But I know that the other homeowners associations are not allowed to borrow money. I don't know if that's by bylaws or by state law.
The one thing to add too is that Waterford House, it'll be 20 years next month that I've lived here, and we've never borrowed money. So this is the first time we've gone to a bank for money. We've done a couple of special assessments, but in talking with folks over the past few months, they were amazed that we had never borrowed money before, that we had been around for 40 years and never had a loan. So again, it's to our credit that we have maintained that. But as Brendan said, at some point, everybody's going to take out a loan somewhere. I saw some hands go up. Who is that? Mary. And you're muted, so I need to unmute you, or you can unmute yourself. Mary, you are muted and I can't unmute you.
She must have muted herself. That's an option in the top right corner of each.
Or the bottom left.
Yes.
Okay, well, in the interim, while we're waiting for Mary to unmute hers,
Yes.
I have a really quick question. This is
Fine.
Donna. So I really appreciate the amount of detail and the candor in the presentation. I do have a question about the stoplight chart. I also, having been DOD, I do appreciate the merits of the stoplight chart. However, it is a qualitative assessment, and apparently some of the elements of that are a bit subjective. So it would be very helpful if at some point, as we sort of move towards the vote period, if we could have a more quantitative assessment of those elements within that stoplight chart. I think that would probably be helpful for the decision-making process. So that's just a recommendation on my end related to that, especially if you're going to post those for people to take a look at.
Thank you, Don. Mary,
Also,
hold on, Mary.
second-
At the very bottom of your screen, there's on the bottom left, there's a button that should say mute, a little microphone, and if you click that microphone,
You have to move your mouse in order to activate that part of your screen.
So second question, while that's in the works, related to the life of the elevators, can someone provide, I know this might be a little granular, but what was the life expectation of the Schindler elevators in the building? Expectancy, I guess, is the proper term.
I suggest that they take these.
whatever it is, I think we're well past it. I mean, it's the original models from 1980.
86 was when the building was built? Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess in this particular case, and this is probably a bit of a retrospective question, but still I think important, considering how old the elevators are, and considering the situation we are now in with the reserves, understanding that we're putting in a fix now for this, and I think that's helpful. What happened that either forced or allowed the situation to get to the point where we're in this sort of untenable
Sure.
situation? So it's just for my edification, also being a relatively new homeowner.
George, I'll take a stab at this because I know we've all talked about this. Part of the problem is, again, just the age of the equipment, the actual machinery, the pictures that Roy showed you in his presentation. That stuff is 40 years old. They don't make the transistors and the diodes and the control boards. So if and when they die, when they go, all right, Schindler right now is going to other buildings to see if anybody's got a spare part, a used spare part for us. And it's getting very hard to find spare parts to bring them here to support us.
I don't mean to cut you off, but that's not the crux of my question. The crux of my question is not necessarily the mechanical piece of it, is how did we get into a situation where we waited till the lifespan of the elevator was completely expended, and from a planning perspective, you would think that this would have been projected, right? Like we would have
The elevators
projected.
were. I don't have the reserve study in front of me, but I think it was projected to start in 23 or 24, I think. I don't have the numbers exactly. George, do you know offhand?
We're on schedule for when this was going to come to the end of its life. It's a actuarial thing. Insurance company does this for bodies, and reserve study people do it for elevators. When are they going to die? And so there's an average, and we are at that end of the life average. The root cause that you're, I think, pointing your finger at, Donna, is the reserve fund didn't have enough money in it. We knew that these elevators were going to be dying at this point in time, and previous boards, of which I was a member long ago, didn't put enough money in the reserve fund to prepare for this. So here we are, pay now, take a loan, but, statistically, these elevators were supposed to die right now, and they are.
Yeah, and just to Roy's point, I mean, the funding of the reserve, and this goes back even to when I moved in here. There's a history early on that the board at the time, back in 2001, 2002, did not want to raise assessments at all, and they were kept low for too long. So we didn't have that running start, if you will, in funding these projects along the way until fairly recently. So your point is very well taken. But as to Roy's point says, we're on schedule with this failing or with this project.
This is Laura. I also think that we should say that this board has worked hard. I'm new on the board. I only got on last fall, and we take this seriously because I don't think any of us want to find this building and these owners, me included, in this situation again in the future. So we need to fix the elevator problem, and then we need to make sure to fund properly going forward. Obviously, we don't want to raise our HOA fees because they're already at the top end of the market, and I don't think there's a lot more that we can do without really negatively impacting the value of all of our property. And so I just think that it's important going forward that we have good people now working on these reserve studies and looking at this and making sure that we're going to have enough money put aside so that future owners, and a lot of us will be those future owners, don't have to go through this again.
And just to kind of put this in perspective, the last two special assessments that we had, or at least that I was here for, I don't remember this amount of planning and analysis going into the lead up to the votes on what to do. So again, to the financial working group's credit, they've done a yo person's job in kind of crunching these numbers, and I think setting a good precedent for responsible financial planning for this building that we haven't really done much of over the past 20 years. And I see Herb has been waving, so Herb.
There's one more thing I should add, because again, as a new owner, I did not know this. The financial working group is actually a new group.
Yes.
Okay. It was put to, as I understand it, it was the first financial working group was done last year, and it was a temporary thing. And it was just this year that we made the financial working group a permanent committee. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that's helpful to know for me because, again, having seen the condo fees go up around the same time that I purchased a unit. So what you're saying is that the financial working group didn't exist back in late 2018. So it's only a year old, more or less. So this type of planning has not gone into the last assessment hike, is what you're saying. The last assessment hike did not take this into consideration at all.
Not this level of detail, no.
All right, thank you.
All right, Herb, you've been very patient.
No, two things I have. One of which really concerns many of the older residents here. The loan does not do anything for your tax position, while a assessment increases the cost of your apartment. So when you sell your apartment, you have a larger cost fixture function, which should be mentioned. That's one of the benefits of a special assessment. As I say, I would check in the area. I know next door, they have had 3 or 4 assessments in comparison to taking out loans. They did it strictly on an assessment area. I don't know if that's true with other apartments in Crystal City, but that's just part of the picture. Maybe there is a definite reason why the other people did not take a loan and suggested.
In our case, Herb, the reason why the financial working group and the board is recommending the loan is because of the fact that many of our owners are on fixed income. They may not be able to support a $8,000 or $10,000 one-time payment between now and December to make this happen. That can disrupt their financial planning as well.
I know with the assessment of 20 years ago, we gave special terms to those people who couldn't come up with the $5,000 or $6,000 that they could pay it over a period. And fact is, I think we were charging those people 1 or 2% interest as a result of passing the assessment over a few months. I think over 6 months.
Could I just weigh in here? Herb, I don't know which unit you're in, but I do know that, let's say you paid $5,000 and put it into the basis cost of your house. You would get approximately 15% back on that when you sold your house in terms of taxes. So you get $750 back after you put in $5,000 under that scenario. I don't see that makes any sense, because you're putting out $5,000. Well, I don't know if that's your number, but you're only going to get back 15% on it. So what exactly are you trying to achieve?
Well, you also have the benefit of not paying the 66 part of the 68,000, which is included in the fees from the bank.
I think Greg pointed out that 66,000 is not coming directly to you. What you're paying is about $1,000 because we've got.
I'm saying that's right. I agree with you. It's only $1,000, but that also is involved with the special assessment benefit.
1750 versus 5,000. I still don't see it.
Can I make a suggestion? If we're going to consider a special assessment and the cost of replacing the elevators is $850,000, let's make an $850,000 special assessment. Compare apples and oranges. If we're going to be doing it, you know, that way we don't have people who are saying, well, I can save a few pennies if we go with a special assessment. Let's special assess 850,000.
What you could do is special assessment, since all the money for the elevators are not needed at once. You could have a special assessment in 2020, a special assessment in 2021.
No way, no way.
I guarantee you'd never sell another unit if you had that pending.
I second that. No way. Thank
No,
you.
you know, the last thing, and as Roy's chart even showed you, the stoplight, we cannot, no owner wants to be in a building with a history of special assessments, especially not 3 or 4 in consecutive years. We never sell a place.
The signal that would send to potential buyers is that this building can't manage its own finances if we're having to constantly go out and do special assessments. And that sends a really bad signal to the market, and I think would very negatively impact all of our property values.
Exactly.
It looks like
now,
Mary's
hold on,
unmuted now. Mary's unmuted.
Hold on. Mary Howell has been unmuted.
Yes,
She's been very patient and very diligent. Mary, the floor is yours.
thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, how do we qualify for special assessment when both elevators are still working? It's not extension purposes. I do realize they're old and due to be replaced, but they are still working. It's not an emergency today.
It would be if you get stuck in one because it breaks.
The bylaws say an assessment has to be for extension purposes. How do we qualify now? They're still working.
Is Brendan or Olga still on the line?
Yes, I'm still here. This is Brendan.
Brendan, can you answer that? I know we talked about that a few weeks ago.
Sure. So what the documents actually say, okay, it says in the event extraordinary expenditures not originally included in the annual budget become necessary during the year, the board may at any time levy a special assessment, shall be assessed against each unit in proportion to the common element interest of the unit. And it goes on to describe the terms and the voting if you go over 15%. So in a very simple analysis, replacing your elevators is in fact an extraordinary expenditure not included in the annual budget. You didn't include it in the annual budget. It's extraordinary if in part because of the amount, for one thing. And just because the elevators still function, I don't think plays in any way into the issue of whether the expenditure is extraordinary or whether it was included in the annual budget. The reality is your annual budget is not included enough to replace the elevators. So I think this easily qualifies under this standard. Furthermore, it's really, you know, when you have a reserve or a capital component like your elevators, it's ultimately the judgment of the board whether it needs to be replaced or not. Your documents are very clear that you're supposed to maintain all the common elements in proper order, condition, and repair. And here you have experts that are telling you that these elevators aren't going to last much longer and can't be serviced much longer because of the lack of availability of parts and other things. So, Mary, I see your point about extraordinary, but it's talking about the expenditure being included in the budget. It's not about the status of the elevators themselves. So I think it qualifies under this section of the documents for a special assessment, section 2D.
A quick point that I'd like to add to that, thank you so much, because that was very helpful explanation, is that, you know, while I understand the point that it may not be like an immediate need right now because they quote unquote technically work, I think anytime a realtor and a prospective buyer comes into the building and one of those elevators does not work, that slowly chips away at the value of all of our units. So I do consider this to be an emergent situation in the sense that I think I get an email probably once or twice a day indicating what the condition of those elevators are in terms of service. So.
We would be imprudent and as a board irresponsible not to fix these things, because by all our architectural standards, these elevators are at the end of their life statistically, and so they could they could both fail at any time. And I could imagine the fire department telling all of us to move out if both elevators failed and they couldn't rescue people, they couldn't do their fire prevention thing. We are being entirely irresponsible as owners and as a board if statistically these elevators are at the end of their life and we choose not to fix them until they fail. That's unacceptable.
I totally agree. And before we get to Jerry Fuller, who's been waiting patiently, think back to, I believe it was January or February, earlier this year, we had a meeting down in the community room, and a bunch of people, we had all gotten down there, and both elevators died. It was only by the grace of God that nobody was in those elevators coming downstairs for the meeting when those elevators died. Jose and LaShawn were here late. We put in a call for Schindler. We ended up having to spend about 10 or 20,000 to get the elevators back in service. So at this point, we're throwing good money after bad to keep these things on life support, knowing that they're already supposed to be dead, or they're right on the edge of death's doorstep. So again, just to underscore what Donna's saying, what Roy's saying. Jerry, and then back to Mary.
Okay, so I have two questions, both of them somewhat legal. The first question is ask for confirmation that the vote will be the same way as the regular votes. That is, the 13-tier people have larger floor space, therefore they have a higher percentage of the vote, or is it simply by the number of owners?
The vote, under your bylaws, the vote is done by common element interest, which does, in your case, relate to the size of the units with the different tiers. So there's bigger voting power for bigger units. That's right.
Okay, the second question I have is regarding to the vote. As I understand it, we have two proposals, and I don't know if the board has decided this, but I can see a scenario where the ballot would be vote for A or B or C, or what happens if we have a deadlock vote? Can we re-vote? What are the options there?
So, yeah, and communities have gone through this before where owners are going to be asked on the form, I would think, since you're presenting two. Well, first of all, let's back up. The board can present one option or the other separately. For example, if the board decided they just wanted to forge ahead and seek the 2/3 vote for the loan option, you could just go ahead with that without an alternative for the special assessment. And that's certainly one way to go. That's certainly simpler to do. But if the board believes it's perhaps wiser to try to just deal with this in one vote, then we could design a ballot where there is a preferred option that defaults to a kind of a lesser included option. So you could vote for the, for the loan, and then if it turns out that, vote for the loan. If it turns out that the threshold isn't met for the loan, then you can choose a second option, which defaults that you do approve of the special assessment. That kind of detail is something that I think we were going to work out after the board heard some of the feedback from this session, which I imagine, Rick, before we sign off tonight, you're going to just kind of see what the sense of the group is. I prefer in some ways for you to go with the simpler option, but we have in many times in other instances, and I'm sure Don Plank has witnessed it also, that we can set up an option where you just go through one process, and if you don't meet one standard, the other lesser, perhaps the lesser one would also be in the mix and be able to be approved in the same process. We can get there.
Thanks, Brendan.
Mary, given the fact that we have to replace the elevators, it seems to me that we need a decision. And I don't know whether the owners could vote to say, let's just leave the damn elevators the way they are, but they don't think that's very wise. So it seems to me that we need an option that gets us to a decision as quickly as possible. Thank you.
I agree. Mary, back to you.
Yeah, I agree with all I've heard, and thank you, Brendan. Then my other point is my prior condo building I lived in had to get a huge line of credit, which is the same as a loan, same concept. And there was no effect whatsoever on sales or how we went about our normal business. So owners should not worry about that. They would, owners like to see the buildings are taken care of, as well as new owners and prospective owners. So thank you, Rick.
Thank you for that comment.
Mm-hmm.
Mel.
Yeah, just a question for Brendan. Insurance-wise, if we allowed the elevators to fail and someone had a medical emergency that they were not able to be evacuated, would the condo association be at fault?
Well, that question has a lot of moxie, as I'm sure you know. It would, whether the association or the board is at risk would depend on the circumstances under which the decision not to repair and renovate the elevators was made. There have been situations where a board was unable to get funding for the board's preferred option because they were prevented because of a vote of the owners that they were not able to get. I can tell you, and I didn't put this on the slide you saw earlier, that there is one fallback option that's in the Condominium Act that would allow the board to assess the community without an approval vote by anybody for a special assessment. We have not included that here because you have a nice special assessment provision in your documents, but the ultimate fallback could be using that Condo Act provision. But to get to the meat of your question though, the board has a responsibility to maintain all the common elements in proper order, condition, and repair. Elevators are necessary in a building like yours. So sure, the association is exposed. Potentially the board is exposed. Perhaps the owners, if they're the ones who don't make the decision that's necessary to get this repair carried out, sure, your association could be at risk from claims by owners from breach of fiduciary duty or breach of your bylaws. And that's why you got to get ahead of this now and reach a decision one way or the other on how you're going to get this done when you have experts telling you these elevators aren't going to last. Good question, though.
Good answer. Other questions? Comments? Going around the room.
One last one. I know that I don't want to be the last thing between everybody and hitting to end this, but, and I guess we could probably talk about this in future meetings, but you know, the presentation by the realtors, it was illuminating in terms of the metrics that she provided, especially as it relates to our monthly assessment as compared to other condo buildings in Arlington. But again, there's a subjective element to that I think we should probably consider given the situation that we're in now. And I understand, I brought it up in the beginning of the meeting, and I know that it's a touchy issue and it's very difficult, and me, you know, technically being a diplomat, not very diplomatic today, but I understand the negotiations can be a long-running issue. That said, I think we need to seriously consider what we can do to remedy the situation when it comes to access to the pool, anything that we can do to ensure that we shore up the value of our units, the value of the condominium building, so that it remains as attractive as possible, especially as we sort of move into this time where Amazon starts to move in and, you know, buildings are going to be going up all over the area. Just, you know, we're in a situation now where COVID has made multi-unit buildings and dwellings a little bit less attractive at this point. So I think we need to seriously consider what we can do to work that out.
We hear you loud and clear. And you know, when I came on the board last year, and certainly when I became president this year, that was exactly one of my big concerns. You know, we're in the middle of HQ2 National Landing. I hate that term. And you know, Amazon's here. We're a luxury building, or allegedly we're a luxury building. We're paying like it is. So what are the amenities and things that we can do to make this a luxury building for all of us? I don't know when you moved in specifically, but it wasn't until March that the front desk stopped using paper to sign in visitors and contractors. Okay? For years, it was, you know, a logbook, a physical paper logbook. We got computers down there, parcels and packages, building link, all that. You know, Waterford, believe it or not, crossed into the 21st century, you know, in some ways. So yeah, the board totally gets what you're saying about making this a good value proposition, especially given our location. So yes, excellent points.
Thank you.
This is Laura again. I'll just chime in because I'm a new owner myself, and I can tell you that at every single board meeting, probably the other board members are tired of hearing me talk about it, but that our HOA fees are out of alignment from the market. From my perspective, it's the point that you're making, and that we need to do something about it. I almost did not buy in this building because of those HOA fees and the services that are available. So I think that we need to do something. I would also like to see us, we're not there yet. Clearly, we got to get through elevators and stabilize our finances, but we need to look and either let the market catch up with us in terms of HOA fees until we raise them again, or better yet, if we could at some point in the future look at lowering them to where we need to be in the marketplace, that would be good as well. So I think there's a lot of different options out there, but given the expenses that we have coming up, it's more important to get some of this infrastructure repaired, and then we can move forward, you know, from there, since we already have all made the decision to buy in here as well.
Completely agree. Thank you so much.
So Laura and Don, those were
We open for
are there any final questions about the elevator project that we can raise?
Not about the
Okay.
elevator, but can we
Then-
open forum?
Then
Hello?
Yes, I hear somebody.
Yeah, me?
No, besides Mel. Somebody on the phone? Was there a question from somebody on the phone?
No, Angela had her hand up.
I had my hand up.
Okay, Angela, please go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to thank the financial committee for a very well put together, intelligent, presentation, which was understandable and makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of work went into this, and it's these kinds of offerings that will bring our building into a more sophisticated level and get us moving forward and to modernize and become the elegant building it was when I bought it 20 years ago. And we have been slow, very, very slow in upgrading. And I compliment all the people who work so very hard on this. Thank you very, very much.
Angela, thank you for your comments, and I'm sure Roy and the Financial Working Group as a team, they've really, they've done excellent work, and they are definitely to be commended for on this project. Are there any last questions or comments about the elevator briefing before we move to open forum? Somebody on the phone.
This is Joyce.
Joyce,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't want to let you see me because it would be frightening. But nevertheless, I want to echo what Angela said about the briefing, because I have been worried about this because I knew that the elevators were going to be very expensive, and my income has not drastically increased. And I've been thinking about how big would the assessment be? How long would I have to pay it? What does it have to do? And plus I had questions about, how it affects value, et cetera. So I think it was a very good presentation, and I really do appreciate it. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Is there anybody else on the phone?
I'm sorry, it's Laura again. I don't know if you plan to do this or not. I should have asked before, and I don't have an easy way to communicate with you except for this. But I think we should maybe just do a rough show of hands to get an idea for what direction people are leaning. Not a final vote, certainly nothing legal, but just to help the board sort of shape our decision-making as we move forward.
I don't see a problem with that, just as an informal show of hands. Granted, there are people on the phone who we can't see their hands. So let's do it.
I'm willing to say, I know that there are a number of other people on the line, but this is Donna. I'm willing to say that I would be leaning very sharply in the direction of a loan rather than a special assessment.
People on the phone, what do you say?
This is Pamela. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Special assessment.
Okay. Anybody else on the phone want to offer an opinion informally?
Richard, this is Helen Trinidad, and my husband Richard. We would favor the loan.
Thanks, Helen and Richard. Any others on the phone? Okay, for those of us who are on video, show of hands will work, and I'll narrate to those on the phone. Who would be in favor of a special assessment? 1, 2. I see 2 people on screen with their hands raised for special assessment. Who here would be in favor of the loan? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I see 11 hands.
Donna said oh yeah, she raised her hand electronically.
Donna, yes, 12, including Donna. All right, that's useful information, just as sort of a finger in the wind sort of a thing. That was a good idea, Laura. Thank you. All right, so in the interest of time, let us move forward into open forum. Mel, I believe you have something you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. One, I can tell you, I agree with the fact that the